Hello there, I'm here on the eve of your Skirmish event, or to try and make this age a bit better, generic Blitz event, with some last minute Riptide lists for your considerations. Earlier this week I published a video on my Riptide deck that I took down my local Skirmish with, and I had a lot of people message me asking if X card or strategy was viable. Riptide is an incredibly versatile hero that can both fatigue or be very aggro, and everything in between, so I decided to show some more lists that I either considered using for Skirmish season or have topped an event this Skirmish season. In total I have two lists for you today. One is a very trap heavy list that slowly grinds down our opponent with ping damage and recycling dominated nourishing emptinesses, and the other is a go wide list that my friend got top 4 with at our local Skirmish, losing out on reaching the final to a double reckless swing. I'm sure we've all been there before. I've also linked the video I did on a cheerio Riptide list down below, as this is also a viable Blitz deck when you condense it down from CC to Blitz and tech a bit for the format. To begin with, we have the trap list, so I'll just quickly scroll through so that everyone can see what is actually in here. There is also a deck link below if you just want to go straight to it and get some reps into it or maybe make some changes. This is a funny build that I did genuinely consider playing because although you kind of troll people with it, in testing I did actually get some decent results out of it, and I thought it would be an unexpected pick. No one would kind of know what they're up against. We are packing in every single trap and red defense reaction under the sun. Our crucible traps are maxed out in this one as well because they're very consistent, as every other single card basically triggers the ability to load them into the arsenal. The main goal of the deck is to chip away our opponent with lots of damage from our traps. For example, the crucible traps, we're running 6 in total. They guarantee 6 damage over the course of an entire game because their effect will always trigger. We also have Talishar in here because it represents damage equal to 3/5 of our opponent's life in Blitz. So with these two combined, we're always chipping away, bring our opponent down slowly while always blocking out, at least on rate. Our main source of damage and our main threat in the deck is Nourishing Emptiness, so the goal of this deck is to hit your opponent with it on our first turn using the Mask of Malicious Manifestations, and then we just keep recycling one copy of it from grave so that it always has the Dominate. To quickly break down the math for how much damage we can do with Nourishing Emptiness, we're able to attack a total of 12 times with this card, and this means that altogether we come in with 72 damage from the Nourishing Emptiness alone. And then when you factor in Talishar and trap damage, you can see that eventually this deck will kill. To help us recycle our Nourishing Emptiness and get it out of grave, we've got 2 Memorial Ground, which is very good. Just put it back on top of the deck, means you see it next turn. We're also playing 2 copies of Codex of Frailty. This one is a bit more awkward because you often either have to save it as a 1-card hand and then also the Nourishing Emptiness so your opponent knows it's coming, or you have to discard a card for the Codex effect. The last thing we have in here for recycling our Nourishing Emptiness is Remembrance. This can shuffle up to 3 action cards from our graveyard, so what we want to do is wait until we have maybe 2 Codexes and a Nourishing Emptiness in grave before we use these. To quickly go through some of the interesting equipment choices, we're playing the Ironhide Gauntlet because this pairs well with the resources that we get from Trench, but also if we have Memorial Ground or Remembrance in hand, we can convert them into a 2 armor block if need be. Mask of Malicious Manifestations is one of those cards that you were happy to see in draft and then never saw it again, but this is actually a crucial key to the puzzle for the deck. Having this card means that we are guaranteed to not have to wait the vast majority of a game before we see our first copy of Nourishing Emptiness. As soon as we have the window, going first or second, we're going to activate this card and we're going to get our Nourishing Emptiness in hand because we play no other attack actions in the deck. If we get lucky and we open the Nourishing Emptiness, then we just got an extra life from the Blade Break block. For the defensive cards that aren't D-reacts, we're playing 2 Brush Off, we're playing 2 Sigil, red and yellow Oasis Respite at 2 copies each. These really help when trying to dodge Dominate attacks or maybe a CNC that's coming in for us. The Sigil especially is very good when going second because it means you have the option of getting a card in arsenal before the start of your first turn, which is always a nice thing to have. When it comes to siding with this list, just take out the least relevant traps and you're good to go. When it comes to what I have in my inventory here, we have 2 pieces of Arcane Barrier and then we also have the Trench. This is to cover up our Emperor matchup, and Codex of Inertia is in the side because it can slow our opponents down while giving us an almost guaranteed usable card for defense in our arsenal. Feel free to swap this out for whatever you like though, it's sort of surplus to requirements. While this deck does do well into quite a broad field, it does have some absolutely abhorrent matchups. Prism, for example, just absolutely crushes this deck because it'll just farm Spectral Shields for days on end, and you can never ever afford to attack into their auras because you have such a limited amount of attacks. But in general, you've got quite a good matchup spread with this list. This in front of you is our second deck, and is probably the polar opposite of the first one I showed. As I said in the intro, this made top 4 at a 33-person skirmish and went undefeated during the first 4 out of 6 rounds of Swiss, so it clearly works well as a deck. I have a few notes to read out for you that its creator, my good friend Gustavo, photoed here with his randomly allocated door prize, he always seems to win something, wish to pass on to you. Before going through any explanations, I'll again quickly scroll through the list just so everyone can see what I'm talking about, and again, the deck link is in the description for anyone that wants to make some changes or give it a try straight away. So a few tidbits of advice from Gustavo. Basically, save Snapdragon Scalers for when you arsenal a 1-cost attack like a Death Touch or Infecting Shot, and then follow up with another one or Codex. Sigil is insane in Blitz, so always keep that in. Always pitch to Death Dealer, even if it's a red. Finding the right spot to block with New Horizons is key. So when you have no arsenal or a D-React in your arsenal in the middle or late game, you can then generally safely block with your New Horizons. New Horizons is in here more to allow for in-turn plays rather than to carry over arrows from one turn to another. Lastly, he recommends that you always go second so that you can try and reload with Sigil. This is generally what you want to do with Riptide anyway, unless you're on that trap list that I just showed you. He also asked me to inform you all that he went 4-0 at a World Side event, which, in his words, makes him the better Riptide player out of both of us in CC. Despite my research, I could not find any independent sources that were able to verify his claim. Remember to always check your sources, people. A few other things to mention about the list. Deadeye. This is in here because, although we can't give our arrows aim counters, it's at worst a yellow that blocks 3, so it's very versatile because Riptide loves his yellows. Again, we have another yellow, which is maybe a bit unexpected, in Razor Reflex. This is here because, as a one-of, your opponent sees one, and it forever lives in their mind. To keep harking on about it being yellow, even if we can't play it, the fact that it provides 2 resources means we can pitch for Death Dealer and then fire an arrow, even if we can't afford the cost of the Razor Reflex. Down on the side here, you'll see a lot of one-of tech choices. You'll be cycling through your deck rather quickly due to your Ponder tokens and Death Dealer draws, which allows you to diversify a bit more because you're going to see them faster even as one-ofs. Other things like Scar for Scar are just a one-of because you want to limit the chance of you seeing it and the go again is dead. And that concludes what I have to show you today. I've also put a link in the description for the first place Riptide list in case you haven't seen that one. But hopefully this video has given you some sort of inspiration on a different way to play this hero. If you want to make your opponents miserable, go ahead and play the trap list. If you want to come up with some nice big combos filled with deadly on hits, you play this list. And as I said before, Riptide can do every single thing in between. He is such a fun hero. Blitz is the perfect format for him right now because his hero ability is amplified due to heroes starting on half health. The fact that he starts on only 1 life less than your opponent in Blitz as opposed to 2 life in CC does actually make a difference too, and we don't have any Dromite to deal with. So if you do decide to take Riptide to your local Skirmish or generic Blitz event, remember 2 things. First, you have to say ping every time a trap triggers, and secondly, your opponent will have no idea what you're doing, so have fun.